This is the first tutorial in a series of tutorials for Adobe Illustrator CC 2017. In this tutorial, we're just basically going to go over the UI and the general layout of Illustrator. So the first thing we're going to do is find Illustrator wherever it's installed, its shortcut. For me, it's in my Start menu, and I'm going to click that. Now let Illustrator load up. And then once Illustrator loads up, you're going to see what's known as the start screen. In the start screen, basically you're going to get a bunch of files here. So this is going to be where all your recent files are. And so any saved files will be over here. CC files is where your Creative Cloud files will be. Mobile creation is anything you do with the Adobe mobile apps that involve Illustrator. For us, we're going to go to Recent, and in this tutorial, we're going to click New. And you have your recent items, saved items, so maybe saved assets like here from Adobe Stock, or maybe saved layouts. You have multiple presets here. You have different sizes of Apple products, web layouts, so web resolutions for computers, pretty much anything you want. For this tutorial, we're going to be doing a 1920 by 1080p, so 1920 by 1080 resolution. You can change your units here, so you have points, picas, inches, millimeters, centimeters, and pixels. And then the orientation, this is sort of like when you go to print a piece of paper. So straight up and down is going to be portrait, and side to side, so horizontally, is going to be landscape. And that's what each of these does. So this is straight up and down and horizontal. Artboards are basically I want to say, like, think of it as like your canvas. So they're the canvases that you have to paint on, and painting is, in Illustrator, is pretty much drawing shapes and everything else. You can set the amount of each artboards you want, or set the amount of artboards that you want, and each artboard will be based off this master size. And then you have bleeds, which today we're not going to mess with, and we'll go into that in a later time. Color mode, CMYK. So I think that's cyan, magenta, yellow. I don't remember what the K stands for it, but pretty much this will be for like printers. RGB will be for anything other than printers, pretty much. And under more settings, basically there's more and more stuff here. And then, of course, we're going to want to call this tutorial 1. That will create us an Illustrator file. Now, once Illustrator loads, you're going to see this screen. Now, before we do anything, we're going to go over the whole layout. Up here, you have your standard file and object and all those setting or options and selection menus. So, document setup, it's all there. Effects is where you might add your effects depending on how your sidebar is set up. So mine is set up for the Essentials preset. Usually I have it set to a custom, but for the tutorial purposes only, I have it set to Essential. So this is where you pick your color. Right now I have the border chosen, but use that to pick your color. Or you can just quickly double click on it and you get this little pop-up. Now, this here is your symbols. Now, symbols are pretty much universal vectors that you can use in any document that you have open, and you can just drag and drop them in. Brushes, pretty standard, similar to Photoshop. Swatches, they're pretty much color presets. So you may have Google Material Design. They have swatches that they put out on the internet for free, which match the material design guidelines. You use those, you put them in here, and you have all of those, so you don't have to go in and manually enter each hex code for each color. Stroke, this has to do with lines and their stroke. That you can put different designs on them. Gradients, obvious. Transparency is transparency of an object or an asset itself. Libraries is for your Creative Cloud. If you have Creative Cloud, libraries is where all your assets are stored. they'll be online. So if you need to transfer multiple assets between documents, whether it be in Illustrator, Photoshop, or After Effects, what have you, they're all under libraries, and you can save stuff there or pull it from there and put it into your Illustrator document. Appearance, this is pretty much like a secondary. It's like your effects tree for in Premiere, except this is for Illustrator, and it defines the effects and appearances and looks of each object or line that you may have. Down here is asset export. This is pretty much for, it's like when you go to create assets for Creative Cloud or create symbols. Basically, you're just going to drag something on here, name it, change a few settings about it, and that should be it. Layers, obvious, it's just like Photoshop. Artboards. Now, this is where if you have multiple artboards, they will show up here in a list. And if I had two artboards here, I think if you double click one or click one, I don't remember, it automatically brings you to that artboard that you've clicked. And from there, you can change different things on your artboard without affecting the other artboards. And we'll go into artboards more when we go into multi-artboard working or workspace and exporting multiple artboards. Over here is where you have all your tools. So for instance, right here I have my select tool, and then I think this is called the individual or direct selection tool. So if I want to directly select a point from the pen tool, I can do so with this. This is more for like selecting multiple things or an entire object instead of each individual point. Magic wand is quite obvious. Lasso tool, we won't go. Well, actually, we're not going to go into depth on most of these tools until we get to that point in a later tutorial. Up here is where you can change your selection settings. So say if I had a square here. Now, I don't want this square to be white. If I already have this selected, or if before I go to create a shape, I can go up here and change it. So I want it to be that kind of like a teal color, and I don't want it to have a border. And it has no border, and it's teal. That's pretty much that. I'm just going to change this back real quick. Basically, that does that. And if you you're drawing lines, change your stroke weight, your pattern, like your profile, your brush definition. So this goes back to the brushes panel over here, and your opacity. So it's like your transparency of each thing. And style goes back to the styles page. Now, if you want to change a few things, you can go to your document setup, and you can change all the settings, pretty much all of them, that you want that you had before you set up your document in the new tab. Those are all available pretty much right here, and more. However, if you want to change your size of your artboard, say you've made an artboard and you're using 800 by 800 pixels, but your client wants a 1080 or 1000 or even 10,000 by 10,000 pixel replica of that 800 by 800 image. Basically, you're just going to go to Edit Artboards. I'm just going to zoom out here. Or you can go right here, actually, rather, if I can find it. The Artboard tool here. Make sure that artboard is selected. And then up here, you can change your X and Y center points. So that's the X and Y axis of the center. The width and the height of the artboard. Now you can lock this or unlock it. It doesn't matter. You lock it, I think it's to an aspect ratio, or both values stay the same. You can also rename your artboard here as well, and you get a bunch of other functions here to show your safe areas and pretty much guidelines. Or you can change your landscape. Pretty much everything you wanted to do before and more. Now there are multiple layout or basically presets to the way that your Illustrator workspace looks. So if I want to do, say I'm doing lots of text work, I change this to text, and I can say, I can do pretty much everything I can do up here, usually down here. So I can increase my text size, I can change the font, so I don't have Google's fonts installed yet, but say I wanted to change it to, I can do pretty much everything. I can change the spacing of the letters, everything. But basically you want either your standard presets, or go out and make your own and personalize things a bit. That's all based on personal preference as well. There's an absolute ton of stuff you can do with Illustrator to make it your own. So up here we have the this was sort of like your tabs bar that you would have in like a web browser such as Chrome. But these tabs, you can take them off and you can put them on any monitor you want. For say, I'm going to take this and drag it to my other monitor. So I can work on that and have another artboard or another project up in this window here, just like this one was. Or if I can have multiple ones and have them like tabs. Over here you have your basic file settings, your edit settings, or edit menu rather, instead of settings. Object setting, or options, type options, selection options, effects, views, so you can change different views. For me, I have smart guides enabled, so that's like snapping, and it gives you guides and lines so that you have things placed correctly. They aren't spaced differently than they should. They're all the same. Window, basically just each of these things here will show up either on this side of your toolbar or over here on your toolbar. Say I wanted the CSS properties. It pulls up a new window and I just drag and drop this into here. But if I want to get rid of that, I can either drag it out or I can click close. So that's pretty much that. You can do anything you want. Heck, you could even take all these off and put them into a different window on your PC. So that's all for this tutorial. Where in the next tutorial we will be doing shapes, and I will teach you guys how to make basic shapes.